Hi, I'm Stephanie J. Block.
And I'm Mary Lee Fairbanks.
Welcome to Season 3 of Stages Podcast,
where we continue to bring creation and connection to center stage.
The show is attracting a lot of young kids coming dressed up. Literally, people come to the theater dressed up in corn costumes, carrying.
I would not want to sit behind them.
Of corn cereal and cans of cream corn for the actors to sign. It's becoming like this wonderful little cult.
Today's guest is a playwright, screenwriter, and producer. He won the Tony, Drama Desk, and Outer Critics Circle Award for Tootsie in 2019, which he wrote with David Yazbek. And he's back on Broadway right now with his new musical, Shucked, which he brought to life with Brandy Clark and Shane McAnally. His other Broadway shows include 13 the Musical, which has been filmed and you can see on Netflix, and Dame Edna is Back with a Vengeance, and many more. Before he was writing on Broadway, he had a long career in television, writing for shows like Living Single, High Society, and Designing Women, for which he wrote the final episode. I would love to talk about that. I loved that show. He developed series for Fox, CBS, and many more. He's worked with so many of our greats like Jennifer Hudson, RuPaul, Bette Midler. The list goes on and on and on. And we can't wait to talk to Mr. Robert Horn.
Robert Horn to stage, please. Robert, please come to stage.
Thank you so much for coming here.
And now the wait's over.
Now the wait's over. You are here. No, I sincerely want to know, so many of us that are privileged to work in this industry to help create musicals, literally from the first reading and then the second presentation and then the out of town. And usually there's this lengthy, anywhere from like 2 to 5 years of a gestation. That's a hard word to say. Gestation of a musical. And Shucked, all of us from the outside looking in went, where did this piece come from? What is this piece about? Was this your brainchild? How did it all work?
Yes. So it's no secret. Many years ago, like 2012, I was approached by Opry Entertainment, the Grand Ole Opry, to turn a property they had the rights to, which was based on an old TV show called Hee Haw.
Oh, I love Hee Haw. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
They wanted me to turn it into a musical. And I said, look, I love variety. I love vaudeville. I said, I'll do it, but I don't want to do a variety show, which Hee Haw was. Hee Haw was this sort of, it was a blue collar version of Laugh-In, if you remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
So it was just like 10-second pops of skits and characters and then musical guests. And so I turned it into a book musical and went to Nashville, met with tons of songwriters, met Shane McAnally and Brandy Clark, who, like myself, were a proud out queer artists in a world that did not really at that time encourage that.
Sure.
And we just loved each other. We had the same humor. And so we started writing. And we wrote a show called Moonshine, that Hee Haw musical, which we eventually did in Dallas. And it did not work out. It did not. We couldn't really, I think we were strapped a little to source material that ended up being our enemy, not our friend. Nothing about that show for us as the artists really worked. And we scrapped it. And we said, we tried, let's walk away. And we did. And we all went off and had other careers. And about 3 or 4 years later, the world changed and politics changed. And I started seeing the division that was happening in this country and the vitriol that was taking over. And you both know, as artists, I needed to write about that. I needed to say something, especially because Stephanie, you've met him. I'm married to a very wonderful, handsome Southern man who looks a lot like your husband, who's from the South and whose family is very ideologically different than mine. And yet we break bread and we love each other and we become family. Despite our differences, we focus on what it is we love about each other. And so I said, there's a way. Well, I'll never heal the nation, but if I could be part of a salve, I'll be happy. And so I called Shane and Brandy and I said, let's start over. Let's write a show about what's going on in the world and how we feel about it. And they said yes. And I just came up with this idea of what Shucked became, which is I knew that the theme of it was going to be that if you can't open your heart to people who are different than you, you don't grow. And so I set it in the heartland America, and I wanted to take this town that had closed themselves off from the rest of the world because they were scared of anybody that was different than them that might come in and change their way of life, might take away their rights, might take away who they are. And so I needed a crop that would grow so tall it could surround the town in heartland America. So of course, corn became a natural selection. I knew I needed the corn to die and what that meant and how that threatened their way of life, and that the only way to save them was to bring somebody different in. And I knew that's where I wanted the entry point for the story to be. And then it became about heroism, and the only girl who was brave enough to risk everything and go out and bring somebody back to help them. And then mayhem ensues and romantic comedy and all that after that. But that's sort of where it came from. We started writing that, and then this incredible, I don't know if you know him, Mike Bosner, this incredible producer.
Yes. I know him from the Muni, the St. Louis Muni.
He worked at the Muni for years.
Yes.
He loves country music, and he knew about the other production we did, and it didn't work, that production, but it was really funny, and he remembers hearing that, and he just said, I'll do this. And I said, Mike, you're talking about a show with no source material, an original musical with no stars, no recognizable names, in a post-pandemic era where tourism isn't back and every theater is about to be filled.
Perfect.
And he said, I'm going to do it. And he did, and he created this incredible marketing campaign, and he monikered the show The Corn Musical, and as you know, then it became, what is that? And I don't know, the show just sort of took on a life. I knew, the lesson I'll say is, I knew for me, again, we talk about a vaudeville. There's a style of comedy that I so love. Comedy that really doesn't exist anymore. I think comedy has changed for a new generation to become more cerebral. And I wanted to say, how can I bring back this real, true American art form of comedy, which is vaudeville, and create it for a millennial generation to get them to laugh at it. And so and bring their parents and grandparents. And so that's what I did.
I know you're a native New Yorker, and to me, you exude New York. So for your humor and your sensibility to be married to a hee-haw musical, I need to know how that happened, because you would never see that coming.
I don't know how that happened in terms of, I got a phone call, and I think maybe everybody else had passed on it, and they said, hey, that guy. But my grandfather was a vaudeville dancer. He, and very much, my mother, I've told this story before, my mother was Ed Sullivan's secretary.
Right. And so I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. And so, I grew up between the two of them at a young age. I grew up being exposed to these incredible comics, the Toady Fields and the Phyllis Diller and the Milton Berles and all that. And then as an artist myself, wanting to be a playwright, it was the Neil Simons and the Murray Shiskells and all those that style of comedy that influenced me.
But let me ask you a question. Were you able to follow your mom to working at the Ed Sullivan Show and 19. See some of these? Oh, she was 19 at the time. She was very young.
She was very young. But she knew everybody in theater because she worked with Mr. Sullivan whenever they would again bring on acts from Broadway shows and things. She was very much responsible for the talent. So she knew everybody on Broadway, and she would take me to shows literally at 5-6 years old, and everybody would come up and know her, and I was like, who are these people? And she, just get an autograph. Just get an autograph. So that sort of fast comedy sensibility is a very, forgive me, but it is a very Jewish sensibility. I think, Jewish comedy, there are documentaries all over the streaming networks about how the history of Jewish comedy in our history. And so I just think that's part of the lexicon of our history. I think comedy has always been that for me personally. It's always been a defense mechanism and a survival mechanism. The way I grew up, I used comedy to sort of survive. So that's sort of how New Yorker ends up in Hee Haw Land. Although again, Hee Haw Land went away a long time ago, but the vaudeville style didn't. And initially, it's a very theatrical style of humor. When when you look back at early vaudeville and what those early vaudeville from, it was big shtick comedy acts that would come out in between the singers and do these very famous bits from Abbott and Costello and further back, and Marx Brothers movies and all of which started in theater, all of that, I think. And then I think that progressed at a natural progression into eventually into television and the Norman Lear years and
which were the best years.
It really
Yes,
was
years of
TV.
television.
They were geniuses.
Yes.
Writing
Yes.
back
Yes.
then.
Brilliant. And
Yeah.
then I was lucky enough to start working in the 90s, which became another golden age of television in a different way, and definitely learnt my craft in that respect in terms of comedy and when you're doing a sitcom, you're putting on a play, you put on a play every week in front of a live audience. And you've got and sometimes a minute, sometimes an hour, sometimes a night to rewrite something entirely. And you exercise those muscles of what that is. And I love fast-paced comedy. But I also, this kind of, what people just go, oh, it's corny jokes and it's dad jokes. But what people, I think, don't always give it credit for is that in order for that kind of comedy to work, especially in theater, the stakes have to be incredibly high. You have to be playing the truth of the stakes in order for that comedy to work. Otherwise, then it is just jokes and they're not funny.
Right.
But unless it's so specific to a character that talks that way. But everybody in the piece has to agree, this is our language. This is the language of the town. This is the language of the people. This is how we talk. And the stakes are so important. And the prism through which we address that is humor. And so comedy like this, especially for Shucked, is actually really rooted in story and in stakes. And then you just get the audience to laugh. I always believe if you can get people to laugh about something, you can get them to talk about it.
Right, to think and talk about it. That's right.
Because it's so much easier. There's a lot going on in the arts right now that feels more like a lecture, and that feels like more like we're telling somebody how they should feel, or forcing them to look at how we feel, instead of bringing people together from sort of different origins and different ideologies and different walks of life and making them all have that same experience. And then they're able to talk about it.
Because they're coming in at the same place. We've found the point of inflection where we're all the same. And you don't need lessons. You just need to feel it and then go with it.
Laugh, have a good time. I don't know if you've seen the show, but there's this really, you don't see it coming, but there's this beautiful message about community and faith and family. And that's
which are the things that we need so desperately right now.
Correct. That's right.
Community.
Well,
people are we're so separated, and we've been so separated and walled in, like you were saying, by the corn, that people are desperate for that feeling, especially, and we've talked about this in other episodes, because religion used to play that role, and it really doesn't so much anymore in the communities. But we also had a fascinating conversation with James Burrows, who also came from theater. Also talked about how he ran his sitcoms like a show every night. It was a play every night. He would write it that way, and it was staged that way. And he feels that was really the underpinning of what his success was in television, was that he started out doing dinner theater up in Massachusetts, and he just took that form and called Mary Tyler Moore and said, "Hey, can I do this for you?" And she said yes. And
if I'm show running the show, that's what it is. You do it like theater. It is a complete collaboration, which theater is. It's a community. It is a group of actors that come together as players, as a group, and work together. You have to have a theater mentality.
Okay, I juggle a lot. I mean, who doesn't? It's like Steph's always saying, the juggle is real. But our sponsor, Neuro Gum and Mints, is an antidote. It helps energize, calm, and focus you whenever you need it. They have these different formulas: Energy and Focus, which is formulated with natural caffeine and B vitamins; Health and Vitality formula, which is immune boosting; Calm and Clarity formula, which is developed with lots of vitamins and scientific things that I don't understand. I can't tell you about the science, but what I can tell you is that Neuro gives you a clean burst of energy whenever you need it, without the jitters that coffee and energy drinks can give you. It was developed by former athletes who train at the highest levels. They created this clean, balanced energy that you can have anytime. And it tastes really good. There's like mint and cinnamon. It's delicious. There is one problem, and that is my teenage son. He walked into my office. He said, "Oh my God, you have Nero," and he took it all. He's an athlete. He's really into this stuff. He took it. But luckily for me, there is a link below that gives Stages podcast members 20% off their order. It's trynerogum.com/stages. Try NEURO gum.com/stages, or just click the link below. Stages podcast is sponsored by Strip Makeup. I tend not to be very complicated with skincare routines. Truly, if it's too many steps, you're going to lose me. Good news for me, I found Strip Makeup. Strip is the world's most advanced skincare forward cleanser. It removes makeup, but at the same time, it hydrates and balances and replenishes your skin. It doesn't prep your skin for skincare. It is the skincare. One step. It's made with 0 parabens and phthalates and doesn't have any of the 1,400 banned EU ingredients. Strip's skin perfecting formulas remove makeup, dirt, and oil while nourishing your face and delivering a dewy, hydrated look. Strip packs high-powered cleansing and makeup removing formulas into a variety of all these different kinds of systems. They have wipes or melts or jellies, so you can find the strip that feels just right for you. My favorite, the whipped coconut makeup remover. It's like fluffy and soft, like somebody whipped together pearls and silk and cotton balls or something. It's really fabulous, and it smells so good. And it leaves my skin feeling really nourished. That one's my fave. So if you want to try it for yourself, go to stripyourmakeup.com/stages. There's a link below, and you get 25% off when you use that link. So go to stripyourmakeup.com/stages, or click the link below for 25% off and dewy looking skin.
Have you ever acted? Have you ever been on the other side of the table? There's a crackle to you that I go, man, I wonder if he was like ever on stage.
Well, I did start. So early in years ago, I got a scholarship to NYU School of the Arts, Tisch School of the Arts, and went to Circle in the Square for about 2 years, a year and a half. I got a scholarship because I wrote my own monologues, and I went in and I hated it. I'm so self-conscious and self-aware, and I realized I just want to give birth to these things. I mean, it's such a collaboration. I love actors, performers. They are
We can feel it.
the other half of my equation, because I can't bring this thing to life. I can only birth it. And they have to raise it. It becomes their child. And you work together to do that. I don't think you ever ask an actor to do something that isn't organic to who that actor is. You work with them to tell the story you want to tell in a way that they can make it real. And that's always a puzzle and a compromise and a this for everybody. And I love that process, because I had a deal at Warner Brothers for about 6 years, and I did a lot of shows, and every show that I did, I put myself in at least once. So I scratched that little itch by being a waiter in a restaurant.
You're like a little
That's so
Easter
funny.
egg. We've
Yeah,
got to
that's-
watch the series and go, oh,
Yeah.
there he is.
Now I want to go back
No.
and find all
Were
of
you
it.
in Designing Women?
I was in Designing Women. I was in Living Single. I was in High Society. I was in porn. I was in everything. I put myself in everything, just like for a moment.
That's fantastic. I love it. Can we go to your childhood? I don't know if you mind talking about it, but I
Oh,
was
sure.
fascinated to see. I heard you talking about that you were in a group home, like an orphanage, for a
Yeah.
period of your life.
Yeah.
I'm really fascinated to learn about that time of your life. And you said earlier that humor became your defense mechanism and your survival mechanism. And I'm sure that that's where it came from. But I'm curious, you clearly started from a challenging place in life, and look at you now, and what a journey.
Well, sure. I mean, I'll say this, and I know it sounds like a hashtag, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think you just have to believe. You have to believe in yourself and your dream. And I think talent rises to the top. I do believe. I think success is this chance meetings, the serendipitous meeting of opportunity and ability. I think your job is to be prepared and do the footwork and know your craft, and the world will then give you that opportunity. And if those two things happen to come together, success happens, but you have to be ready. And I got lucky. I know there isn't a moment that I'm not at New 42, in those rehearsal rooms, in that theater in tech, sometimes the hardest times, there's not a moment I don't know how long the line is to get in that door, and just how incredibly lucky I was that I got through. And so the shorter version of the story is, my mom gets so mad when I tell this story. She's like, why are you telling the world our business? my mom at a time when really it was not an open forum of discussion, suffered from depression and she had a tough early life herself. And my father left when I was born, never met him, left my mother with 3 kids, no money, paid no alimony. And she worked 3 jobs and struggled. And ultimately, we were in therapy for what was called the JCCA, the Jewish Child Care Association. And they ultimately felt that my mom needed a break. She couldn't really raise us. And so my twin sister and I were sent to live in my sister was sent to a group home. I was sent to an orphanage called Pleasantville Cottage School. It's up in Pleasantville, New York. Ironic name, I know. And so I was about 9 when I went there. And I lived in this orphanage till I was about 13 and a half. And I ran away. And I was like, this is not for me. And so I was just shy of 14 and I ran away to New York and lived on the streets and found my way and was drawn to theater. I think one of the interesting things in the struggle to how do you survive in an environment like that, which is basically filled with kids who in some ways suffer from mental health issues or broken homes. And it is not a happy place. But I know this sounds crazy, but it's true. I pretended the whole thing was a movie and that it was my movie about my life. And every day I would pretend I was being filmed and this was my story. And I used comedy to not get my butt kicked because there was, and also through humor, I was able to just sort of face every day, make my movie funny and make friends, because if you're funny, people liked you and protected you. And so that's where I sort of honed my craft. I would literally do stand-up bits for a group of kids. They would just sit there and I would put on comedy shows. And then I left and ran away and came to New York, and I lived in a group home in Regal Park for a little while. And then, crazy story, but true story, I was just maybe 14 and a half. I was walking around the village looking for a place to live. And this is the 70s in New York. So you have to understand it's very different. Yeah. And at the time, it was very sort of, can I say mafia? It was very sort of mobster down there. And there were these guys sitting outside playing chess. They used to play chess on the street. They had these chess clubs and they were
cerebral mobsters. I love it.
And I asked this guy, do you know of any, I know of any apartments? And the guy said, come with me. And he showed me this apartment on Thompson Street in the village. It was this kind of tiny cold water walk up, roach infested little apartment for, I think, $85 a month. And he said, can you pay the rent? I said, yes. He said, you slide the money under my door every month in cash. Nobody knows you're here. You cause me no trouble and you can have the apartment. I'm on an apartment at 14 and a half. Wow. And it was glorious. It was glorious. I got to tell you, theater was thriving at that time. It was the mid to early 70s. There was a renaissance of theater, of the public theater, and Chorus Line had just come out of the public. And
Joe Papp over that
was all. It was the birth of all of that in so many ways. It was a glorious time, and I lived for theater. And there I was living in the village. I worked so many jobs to pay the rent. One of which I think I was 17. I was a bartender at was then the Uris Theater. And is now the Gershwin Theater, when The King and I with Constance Towers and Yul Brynner was there. And then that show left and a new Sondheim musical came in called Sweeney Todd. And nobody knew what it was. And I bartended.
So amazing that you got to be there.
And saw it every single night. But so I just had this rich history. It was actually, I tell people the story and they're like, oh, it's so, and I said, no, it was the best way to grow up. I'm on my own. I didn't have any parents to tell me who I was wrong. I didn't have anybody to tell. I guided my own light. And
did you go to school?
I did. Well, I went to high school in Queens for like 6 months and I hated it. So then I took what was then called, I don't know what it's called now, but like an equivalency is like a GED to get your diploma. Yeah. So I just did that and passed, and that I was. So
you were just clearly really bright, really smart, and things came to you easily, and you could decipher things in a way that sitting in a classroom never was going to work for you.
It was not my thing. And I would go to school, and all I wanted to do was make people laugh. I mean, I really was just about wanting to be funny. And then I did stand up in New York for a while with a partner. We did improv stand up, and I cut my teeth on that. And I don't know, it just sort of, I just knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a playwright. I wanted to be in theater. I loved that community. You both know when you know you can't do anything else, then you have to do what you do. And so nobody cared. Nobody would give me a break. The 80s started to hit, and New York, when theater kind of died, Cats came in, it changed the whole landscape of theater. The British invasion happened. It was a very different time for theater. The AIDS crisis hit. Everybody I knew, everybody around us we were losing. The city went into a depression. It was a really hard time. And I decided I'm going to go to California for a while. And I went to LA and got this television career I never expected. I just wanted to come back and do theater.
But I want to hear the story about when you were selling concessions at the Uri Theater. I heard you tell this story.
Theater? Well, the story was, are you talking about my cup story?
Yes.
Well, my cup story was this. I have shame about this, but that's okay. So the way that you would work, we were so poor. I mean, I'm telling you, I was 17 years old. And we made $3 an hour. And so if you start off with like 50 soda cups at $1 each, and at the end of the night you had 25 soda cups, you should have $25. That was the simple math. So what we would do was we would walk around during intermission and rewash out the cups that people bought before the show and resold them and kept the money.
It's because
So
of
if I
you.
gave anybody herpes, I apologize.
It's because of you. When you go to the theater now, sodas are $17.50.
It's because of me.
Yeah,
But you know what? I paid my rent. I
was going to say, you didn't have a choice. Mickey the mobster was waiting for his $85 in cash.
You better slide that under the door.
Now, obviously, you are a grown human being. Do you ever still use that device of creating a coping mechanism of, okay, I'm in a movie. This is still a movie. Because I will be honest, I do. I will be driving in traffic or whatever, and some of the heavier thoughts will come in. And so I'll crack my window, I'll feel the breeze, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm Beyonce, the wind is blowing through my hair. I'm going to sing out a song real loud and just create a better, version of what's actually happening in reality. It's still something that I will use as a grown human. Do you ever go back to that?
Well, I'll say two things. One, when the time comes that Beyonce hears you sing, she's going to be in awe. I know that. Two, I think we are, those of us in the arts, always a little melodramatic, there's always a little drama in our world. And I think I don't know that at this point in my life, it's as much a coping mechanism as it is just a wonderful way to fantasize and always live in our heads. We live in our heads.
We do.
As performers, as artists, you both know, and we live in our heads, and we have to, what we do is so much output. We give, we write, we perform. You output. You've got to nurture that with input. And so some of that input not only comes from being inspired by what other people do, but by allowing yourself to have those intimate moments in your own fantasy, in your own brain, to think and nourish and create, so that you have the availability for output, to be able to perform, to be able to write, to be able to create. And you can't, like right now, I'm just coming off of a year without a day off. I launched 2 musicals at the same time. It was constant work. And literally yesterday I said, I have nothing left. I am, the well is dry. So my husband said, we're going away. We're going to go lay on a beach. We're going to go, and you're going to do nothing but read and watch movies and watch TV and regenerate your creativity, so that you be inspired by what other people do, so that you can create your own art. And that's really important. I think so much is expected of us as artists, and that's the job. we could talk about this later, but I'm also fascinated by a new generation of actors that don't necessarily have the same sort of theater history etiquette that I think we grew up with, which is, it's not all just about it is that you are there for the good of the other people around you and
Of
the show.
the whole. It's
Of
not
the
about the
whole.
individual,
I
it's
think
about the
I'm
whole.
very fascinated by and I understand it by a generation that feels that anyway. I got to keep my mouth shut about that. But you know
No,
what I'm
but you're
saying.
right.
I think that's changed, and I'm hoping that it tilts a little bit back more towards the idea that that the greater good is always the peace, and not.
That's right.
And you are all, no matter who you are part of that of that piece.
I have to say, I feel I've never worked with you. I've never met you before, but Stephanie's right. You do have a crackle and a sparkle and a pop
Oh, thank
about
you.
you, you know? Oh, it's like the cereal. I didn't mean that to come out that way, but you have this sparkle
Someone once
about
did
you.
pour milk on me, but that's a different story.
That's another episode.
Yeah, that is.
But what I wanted to say was, you know, I teach the chakra system, and the premise of the chakra system is how we input, process, and output energy. Basically, that's what it is. And what you were just saying made me think it's the person's nature. So you're talking about input and output, but it's your nature that takes the input and processes it in this really unique and special and optimistic, unharmed way.
Ooh, unharmed.
And then puts it back out in the world. And it's rare and it's really beautiful because we all get information. We all process it in different ways. Some of us see the negative first. Some of us find all the reasons why things won't work. And it's really interesting that the heart chakra is called anahata, and it translates to say unharmed. And you process everything through your heart. You're sort of the embodiment of that concept, and it's really
and it's what we
beautiful.
need. I think it's what
really
we
beautiful.
need
I don't think
in the
anybody's
arts
ever
right
said anything
now.
nicer to me. That was really beautiful.
It's so clear to me. It's so
really
clear.
important that my comedy is never mean. I try so hard that my comedy is
I
never
know that
at
about you.
the expense of somebody. It's always, again, about the stakes of the character, and I try never to be mean or too political. I mean, I do. There's a joke in it's interesting. There's a joke in Shucked that's very political, and I wanted to cut it. And the women of the company came to me and said, "We are asking you." It is sort of a female empowerment joke, but and the women of the company came to me and said, "We are asking you not to cut that because it represents us." And it's the only time in the show that I get political. But I kept it for them because it was important, and I wanted to make sure morale stayed up. But I try to just not base my comedy on that, and even though it's sometimes bawdy or whatever you might say. It's never mean. I don't like mean comedy. I don't like comedy at the expense of other people's damage.
That, and as when you're speaking that you were a stand-up, which I find to be the scariest of the art forms. I mean, you have to be a brave spirit to say, I'm going to stand up here by myself and I'm going to make you laugh. Talk about expectations. That's crazy. But when you're standing up there, was that also a similar mindset? I'm not going to be harmful or hurtful. What was your comedy? What did it look like when you were doing stand-up?
Well, I did improv comedy. So I worked with a wonderful comedian. Her name was Yvonne Dillette. This is many years ago. And we sort of did improv, more like, the audience participation comedy. So they would give us an idea and we would improv on it. And then we had some pre-written skits that we would do. So it was more skit improv comedy. I didn't do necessarily hard jokes.
Yeah.
So it was more that, but yeah, it was more just about at that time I was young, I was 19. And it was more just about trying to be shocking than anything else. We just wanted to be dirty and shocking and say really things that people would gasp at, but not mean. I just don't see the need for it. I understand it in other people's, there were some comedians out there that I love that, I mean, they sort of hold a mirror up to people, comedians that just hold a mirror up to their own lives and to our lives and make us look at ourselves, but never judge. They don't judge. And as a queer storyteller, I do often find myself making statements in a sort of a subversive way to get my point across. In Shucked, I've created this insular isolated community, but within this town there are gay characters, there are non-binary characters, there are characters of every walk of life, and so it's not a town that is
It's not
afraid.
Brigadoon.
It's not Brigadoon. This is not a town that is afraid to lose their way of life because they're afraid to lose sort of the ideological way of life, what they believe. And I sort of, that came for me, obviously, about the discussion we're having about the Second Amendment, the discussion we're having about what rights we have over our own bodies and all those things. So what I wanted to do was create a place where there was a little bit of everything. What they just felt is we don't need anything more because we've got a little bit of everything. So it's an interesting, it modernizes the idea that who we are and how we isolate ourselves. And that was really important to me. I didn't want to do a town that was all one thing. Right. I wanted to show that no matter who what it means to feel like you want to protect what you is familiar, what you believe, right. But that how limiting that actually is.
Yeah, and everybody does it. It's not just Republicans. It's not just Democrats.
We all do.
People on the right. We all do it, and we all justify how we do it because we think our way is the right way, no matter how liberal or not liberal those judgments might be.
The amazing thing is when we sit with each other, you realize, look, you just want the best for your children. I want the best for my children.
Exactly.
We want a peaceful and safe environment where we can thrive and we can feed our families and we can go about our day. You want the same thing. Yeah. So we are actually more alike on the bigger issues than we are different.
But there's a line in Shucked where these two, they're cousins and best friends. And one makes a choice the other one does not believe in. And she says, I may not agree with with the choices my cousin makes, but I will die to defending them. I will die for the right to defend them. You don't have to agree with somebody's choices, but on both sides, you should die for the right to defend those people's choices, as long as they don't harm you. And I think what's happened is, and we don't have to get political, but I think what's happened is because of power and people's hunger for power, division and fear is the easiest way for other people to have power.
Well, so, the basis of tolerance and understanding is prosperity and opportunity. When prosperity and opportunity are going down in societies or in cultures or in neighborhoods, that's when
scarcity brings out the worst in people.
Tolerance comes up.
True.
You need a common enemy. You need a common enemy. Yeah. And the people at the top, if they point you toward common enemies and create division, that's where everything starts to go downhill.
I also want to speak to what you just said. Say that line again. Willing to die for.
I may not agree with my cousin's choices, but I will die for the right to protect them.
The ones that scare me are the ones that are willing to kill for. Right? And there's a big difference in that sacrificial for the good of man and the doing harm for the ideology of the greater good of man. That's a big difference.
Big.
And what fascinates me is I sit at the Nederlander Theater every night, and I literally watch people come in in camouflage and in pearls. I see such a diversity of people that are coming to share this experience, and when suddenly 1,100 people are all laughing at the same thing simultaneously, it gives you hope. It
doesn't matter what their politics are.
Doesn't matter what their politics. The theater is such a unifying experience. You're sitting in that dark space as a community, a participant in something live, because a musical or a play is a live thing happening only once in that moment, that way. And the audience is a character in that, because the audience is always the missing element. When you're rehearsing a show, the audience is always the missing element. And there's something about that communal experience that brings people together. People need this art form in their lives. It is nurturing. It is we've lived without it for a period of years, and we felt that hole. We felt something missing. So I love that it's coming back in so many different ways. There's so much. It's such a rich season. We're entering, I think, a new golden age of theater in the most wonderful way.
All right, we've arrived at the 5 questions, but just before, a word from our sponsors. Robert Horn, if you were a pizza, are you thin crust, thick crust, deep dish, and what are your toppings?
I'm New York. I'm New York raised pizza, whatever that is. But and my toppings are simple. It's a joke I want to make.
Go on.
No. My topping. Well, I was going to say my toppings are usually 6'2".
I was going to say your
but I won't
husband.
say it.
Okay.
I'm very simple. I'm cheese. That's it.
All
I
right.
don't want a lot of stuff piled on. I want it simple.
You got it.
Okay, if you could wake up tomorrow morning with any superpower or ability, what would it be?
Oh my God. Okay, this is gonna sound crazy, but since I was a little kid, I've always wanted the ability to fly.
Yeah.
We get a lot of flyers. We get
I
a
just-
lot of flyers.
I mean, honestly, or hear what people are thinking, because I always think people are thinking the worst about me, and so I would love to hear that that's not true. And so, literally, I'm so paranoid. I always
Yeah,
think
but
people are
imagine if it
thinking-
was true. You'll
Yeah.
never get past
But
that.
maybe if I could fly over them and hear what they were thinking, that could be my superpower.
That could be your power. So we call your family and we say you've landed yourself in jail. What would they assume that you've done to get yourself there? for
Wow, that is
instance?
an intense question. They would assume that I took the rap for somebody else.
Oh,
Aw.
unharmed.
Yeah, see?
Oh, wait, here's the better question. They would
Yeah.
assume that I stole someone's heart. That's my other answer.
Okay. Do you have a ritual or something that you do before a performance, before or at the end of writing a play, some ritual that you incorporate into your theater world or even just your life, before you get on a plane or anything like that, a ritual or a habit?
Yeah, I suffer a little bit from yes, I tend to have a lot of little rituals that sometimes can be debilitating because I sort of have to do them before a show.
You have a little OCD in you?
I do have a little OCD, yeah. And I'm working on it. But so there are certain things that, I have to walk in certain places and touch certain things.
Oh, really?
Before a show or it won't be a good show. I have to walk to the theater in the same way. I have to pass the line of people going in a certain. So yeah, I do have those things, and I don't think it ever even makes a difference. It's just I have.
You
those
have to do it.
Well, you
It's a
can't risk it.
compulsion.
You can't
Not when
risk
I'm
it and not
writing.
do it.
Not when I'm writing, but it seems to happen when there's a lot at stake. Like there's a performance and people are going to judge it. I get really scared and nervous, and those things sort of comfort me.
All right, last question. If you were a nail polish, what color would it be? And what's the cheeky little name that you would apply to that nail polish?
Oh my God. I would probably be, I was just on Instagram, and this actor I saw, he polished his nails, this gorgeous sort of silver bullet kind of color. And I love, the purple is my favorite color. It was this intense silver. And I said, if I ever polish my nails, that's what I would want. So it would be silver. And I guess it would be silver bullet.
Silver fox.
Silver
Oh,
fox.
silver
Hello.
fox.
Anyway,
What a pleasure
good
to meet you.
questions.
So nice to meet you and to talk to you. You're just a joy.
I feel
Okay.
even more privileged knowing that this is your first vacation in 5 years, and yet you still sat with two middle-aged women and talk about your life.
Well, my favorite people are middle-aged. I make a joke about that in Shucked also.
Do you really?
There's they're after these. So this guy, I won't tell you the story, but there are these minerals worth a lot of money that this guy comes after, and he takes them to this jeweler who says, if you find this, you'll find more of them. They gather in clusters like single women in their 30s. That and the audience they just like what? So yes, well, listen, I'm thrilled to talk to you.
So thank you for this time.
Thank you for inviting me. I really do appreciate it.
And now, here's what struck a chord with us. I'm emotional. You
Aw.
said unharmed, and there was something about that that my eyes just started to well, and I was like, you can't start crying right now,
You know,
Block.
it's really
But
funny. I got really welled up when I said it to him as
why
well.
is that? Are we just living in a day and age where we just assume people are going to come at us with harm or defense or
Because
sharp teeth?
I
That's
think
such a
it's
beautiful word that I rarely hear anymore.
I think it's a very rare trait, and he truly embodies that trait. The actual translation is unstruck. My favorite way to teach it is there's a Mark Twain poem, and the poem is, forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds upon the heel that crushed it. And that is the essence of Anahata. It's the essence of the heart chakra. It's the essence of, that's the lesson. That's how we're supposed to live. So when someone crushes you, your automatic response is supposed to be something beautiful, something lovely.
Oh my gosh. I don't think it's someone. I think I'm just in a state right now, looking from the outside in, so many blessings, right? So many artistic opportunities, and my family's with me. But there is this unexplained, I feel a little crushed. I feel a little crushed lately. And I think it's a world heaviness that is sitting on my spirit. And I'm trying to create beauty. But when you said unharmed, I said, I'm having trouble getting to that place. There was another thing that I read this week, by the way, that Mark Twain quote is so
incredible,
beautiful.
isn't it?
And yeah,
My
we need
favorite-
to put it in the links
favorite
for
poem.
sure. You know, we're always asked, do you see the glass half full or do you see the glass half empty? And in this day and age, we literally should be saying, I'm just grateful I have a glass.
Yeah.
You know, and that is where I have to kind of recenter myself, going, there is so much going on. There is so much hardship and pain and sadness and devastation, but closing in a little bit for protection and for the preservation of your own person. You have to just look at the glass and say, look, my husband's here, my daughter's here, we're all healthy. I get to sing, we are traveling the world, we're meeting great people. It's that calibration that's necessary. And sometimes it really is just looking at the glass to recalibrate.
You have to allow yourself to go inward. Everybody, you know, it's that ebb and flow. Sometimes your energy's out. Sometimes you have to go in to like you said, recalibrate, refill. You know, when I'm feeling what you're feeling, I have a meditation that I do before I go to sleep. I picture I don't picture it as a glass. I picture it as like a clay pot.
Okay.
So I picture a huge clay pot that's a big hollow from my shoulder blades all the way down to the bottom of my belly and back up. So that's the pot, right? And I picture the pot shattered. It's broken. Some pieces are tiny, some pieces are huge. And I see myself sitting on a shore with mud, and I'm picking up each piece of the pot and I'm putting mud from the earth around the broken shards and putting them back together. And some nights I can get the whole thing rebuilt inside my chest, and some nights I can't. And some nights I just get, you know, a few of the bottom rungs built, you know, filled. And what I picture, as far as I get, is filling it up with water. And I see, oh, are there any leaks? And if there are leaks, I just get a little more mud and I close in that area with the mud and I drift off to sleep, literally picturing myself rebuilding the pot that carries my life force and my energy inside of me. Just me, myself, sitting in the mud, dirty, rebuilding and taking the earth to fortify the leaks. And that's my meditation when I'm feeling the way you're feeling. And it's okay. Sometimes you have lots of water. Sometimes you only get an inch down there and there's still leaks. That's okay. You don't judge where the leaks are. You just take the time
tonight,
patch it up. And people like talking to him, what I find fascinating, and that's why I wanted to ask him about his childhood in the youth home and all of that. At 13, 14 years old, like that's incredible. How you grow to be a man who doesn't blame, who doesn't use those experiences as excuses for why he never accomplished anything. And I thought of this guy that my son knows. He runs a boxing gym in Lawrence, Massachusetts, which is a tough town. He's in his, I would say he's in his early 30s now. He same thing, was put in a home at a very young age, maybe like 7 or 9, maybe younger, maybe like, I think his sister was maybe that age and he was a little bit older, 10, 11, got put in a home, hated it, got a backpack, cut 2 holes in the bottom of the backpack, put his little sister in the backpack, put her legs out the holes, climbed out the thing and ran away. So years went by, he ended up in a gang and in jail and spent 13 years in jail for drugs, right? Got out and said, this is not going to happen to another kid if I can help it. And he scrapped together his money and opened a boxing gym in Lawrence. And he says to every kid in Lawrence, come here after school. You don't have to pay me if you can't pay me. You can do your homework here. I'll teach you how to box. Gets these kids off the street all afternoon.
They have a place to belong.
He said, I needed structure. I needed someone to be a father figure in my life. And I ended up in a gang because that was the only sense of family that I had. I need to create a place for these kids to come so they don't end up 13 years in prison like I did. What a guy. And so you say to yourself,
mission.
how is that your youth? And you come out and you do something good with that. Just like him. How is that your youth? And you come out and you make people laugh. You are unstruck in the world. Wow.
Because he's not thinking about the I. He's thinking about the community, right? He's thinking about beyond himself and how I can change others, which we all know changes us. Once you reach out and say, I want to help, or I want to shape, or I want to be of service, it really does change you. It is a beautiful, and it looks selfless, but it's very selfish because once you start doing it, you know how it feeds you. Yes.
But that is the chakra system. So it's how we input, process, and output energy. And that's what's so powerful. You have the choice. You may not have the choice for what gets inputted. I mean, you do in some senses, who you surround yourself with, how you live your life. Yes. But there are things that happen that are inputs that we may not like. We may not be able to handle. We may, then how do you process that?
Right.
So you can take any energy that comes at you and you have the power to transform it into something new and then expel it out into the world. I mean, that's so powerful to think about. So powerful. It's not meant to run you down like our train. It's not meant to crush you. It's meant for you to discover the power of transformation within your own self.
And you know what? If you think about it, that's kind of all the elements of energy, of earth, of water. That we're not, creating any more water. What's on the earth is what's on the earth, and it gets absorbed, and then it comes back down as rain, and then it goes into the ocean, and then it comes down from the streams, and then it gets absorbed. Like, there's no more of this stuff, but it does take on different shapes, different meanings. So it's kind of the same idea that all of these elements, you're not recreating, but you can transform them into what you need or what the earth needs or how you can be of service. Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, I loved that conversation.
I did too.
Lovely chit chat. What a great guy.
Thank you, ML. I love you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Stages podcast is produced by Stephanie J. Block and Mary Lee Fairbanks in association with iHeartRadio. It can be heard on the iHeartRadio podcast and iHeartRadio Broadway or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Please join our cast by signing up at stagespodcast.net, listening, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. It all makes such a difference in getting the word out. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again soon.